thanks for coming along and listening in. It's obviously something that's near and dear to our hearts, the Young 88 here in New Zealand. So Cam and I are really excited about this. So first thing, obviously not doing much sailing at the moment. Just be really good to support your class and make sure you're all members and join the class just to support them through this time. So if you get a chance after this seminar, if you could do that, that'd be great. Just a little bit about us. Cam, I've known Cam for a while. I first sort of met him dinghy sailing, and he's a very good dinghy sailor. And after that, he's done 3 America's Cup campaigns, 1 ocean race, now it's called, and he's been doing the GP circuit, Grand Prix circuit for about 12 years. He's also won Young 88 Nationals with Giro on the Flash, and also he's competed in a few others with friends. A lot of you guys know me, Wilsey, and obviously work at North, and I've sort of won the Young 88 Nationals 5 times, and I've also done quite well in the Owners Nationals, just crewing for Owners as well, quite a lot. So anyway, that's a little bit about us, but we'll rip into it. So we're going to break it up into three topics, really. We'll try and keep it to about 45 minutes so we don't lose you all. So the first thing that we're going to do is talk a little bit about boat speed. So here we go. First thing I like to do for the boat speed is obviously there's no point being really fast and everything flying off your boat and breaking. So first thing we got to do is make sure it's all reliable and works. I've been on a lot of boats where it's not something's breaks, and basically I really believe in you got to control the things that you can. There's enough variables in sailing like wind shifts and things like that, and a bit of luck that you can't control, but you can control making sure you've got a reliable boat. So that would be one of the first things I like to do. And the next thing is basically making sure your controls are nice and easy to use. So many times outhauls can't be pulled on, or they're really hard to access. There's no real excuse for that. All those things should be easy to do, and so you don't have crew off the rail, which is really, really important. Like someone going in off the rail can be 0.4 of a knot at a real crucial time. So yeah, just having enough purchase and things is really, really important. Then basically once I've got those components on a Young 88 or the like, I like to make sure the boat's down to minimum class weight. So basically putting the boat on a bit of a diet and getting rid of everything that's excess. When I do that, I take everything off the boat, and then I look at what's required in the rules on the boat and put it back on and stack it in the correct place to make sure I've got nothing extra. And when you are packing it, I've found that the Young 88's quite sensitive to fore and aft weight. So a lot of people just have the same stack when it's light or breezy, and they leave a lot of weight up around the mast area downstairs, their safety gear, etc. I like to move that a long way back as far as the rules allow. Once it gets breezier, I find the boats perform better with the weight a bit further back once it's breezier. And like, I don't know, Cam, have you, I certainly know in the Grand Prix boats I sail, we spend a lot of time packing boats for different weather conditions. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, for sure. And that goes, daily with your water, things like taking your water bottles and things like that, and where you put them in the boat during the day. Through the range of conditions, it's hugely important, and as you say, it can be moved from, as far forward as up by the rig in most boats to back behind the companionway, quite a way aft. Moving, meters in the boat will make a huge difference to the performance. From your light sailing to fully cranking in the 20 knot stuff.
Nice. And then one of the last real key things in terms of boat preparation is making sure the bottom is totally perfect. I obviously sell etchels quite a lot as well, and we are super fussy with an etchel, so I sort of carry that on to the 88. An etchel, we're polishing up to the last minute that we can put it in the water by the rules, and we're diving it every morning. Some people dive it twice a day. Just any sort of growth, any imperfection really does have an effect on the performance of the boat. And obviously I sailed Raging last year, and the bottom's pretty nice on that boat. It's got a nice hard anti-fouling. It's white, so we can see if anything's caught on the keel or rudder quite easily when we look in. Like seaweed's quite often a darker color, and it's easy to see against the white. And just the anti-foul being quite hard, you can give it a nice finish, nice sanded finish, nice wet and dry. And really another key thing is once you wet and dry it, make sure that you wash everything you've sanded off. Too often people do the wet and dry and don't get everything off. So that's really important.
I think yes, it's really focus in on too is those leading and trailing edges of your fin and your rudder. Anything like that, any sort of imperfections in either edge of your foils will make a huge difference to performance. It's almost, if you have got some little ding on your leading edge of your keel or something, it's almost like having a bit of weed on the whole time, which we all know is not fast. And as Wilsey said at the beginning, these are things that you can control.
Perfect. And one other thing I noticed, a lot of you guys go out on the floating dock. If you do, you're getting lifted up by the bottom of the keel. So you've got to check the bottom of the keel if you do that, because you can't obviously access it once you've been lifted up via that method. If you're in the slings, it's a lot better for doing the bottom of the keel. Moving on to a little bit more about crew work for speed. Cam's going to talk a lot more about crew work later in the seminar, but like one of the first things I learned from my mate Tim Lidgard, who actually was on board years ago when we won our first Young 88 Nationals. I asked him how the Genoa looked, and he basically replied, "It's a lot faster if I'm up hiking on the side of the boat." And I totally agree. So him being to leeward and trimming it and looking at it is 0.4 of a knot or so in those boats. So him being up on basically trimming the sail in and jumping up on the rail and hiking, that's a fast sail shape, really. So I'm just saying, sort of get it to your marks or what looks good quickly, and then get out hiking as quick as you can.
Well, I think just to add to that, Wilsey, is just make sure that you have really nice marks on your sheets, so you can, once you've spent the time in your training looking at your trim and been happy with your trim setup, you don't need to keep doing that in a race. You know what your settings are, you know where your marks are, get it to it and smash it on the rail.
Yeah, perfect. And then these boats, Young 88s, really, we've touched on it already with stacking the gear, but fore and aft positioning of the crew is critical. And I think you've got to be pretty aggressive, both upwind and downwind. Basically, the person trimming the genoa, if it's light, you've got to get them right forward, right up towards the companionway, if you can. So as soon as that tack's complete, get them out of the boot. Vice versa, going downwind, it's fine for them to be in the back, but in the light, you want them forward again. So just got to figure out what wind condition, but really move the crew fore and aft to suit. And also, I really don't like the bowman to be way up here and everyone to be spread all over the boat. I like everyone to be as tight as they can, moving as one sort of unit rather than spread out. So try and consolidate the crew weight as much as you can.
And that's the, can I just add in there, Willsey, that's really important too when you're on the rail, upwind or downwind, or if everyone's in a line, that everyone's hiking the same as the person next to them. And you know, the aerodynamics of that is really important. If you have everyone hiking differently, or some people coming in for weight and others staying out, you end up creating a lot more drag aerodynamically. So make sure that everyone's working together. So when the whole stack on the rail are moving in and out, you're doing it all together. You might do it less, rather do less and all of you do it than have one person in and 3 people out, because you end up creating a lot more drag.
Nice. Okay. And then, so now we're just moving to a little bit more about the boat, the boat's tune. So the way I like to set up the 88 is I really hate, well, any boat, I hate to be going upwind and having to push the helm away from me all the time. I like to have a little bit of weather helm. So I know that we've been raking the mast back further and further to basically move the center of effort and get a little bit more helm. And that's worked out pretty well. So just think about that when you're sailing upwind, just lightly feel the helm and feel if in the light, if you've got no weather helm, we really need to be looking for a little bit more rake if we can in the setup. And also we can move our crew weight accordingly once we've got that rig set. And then I actually had a question that relates to this sent in from one of the people here. It said, my boat's fast and 10 to 12 knots, but I really don't know what to do either side of this. And this goes back to the helm here. The best news is that's great news that your boat's fast and 10 to 12 knots. That's what we call our base setting, our medium setting. And I really try and get that base setting nailed. And then from there, in the light airs, keeping it really, really basic. We're easing the forestay off in the Young 88 to basically create a little bit more helm, a little bit more rake. And also, when you let the forestay off, the rake goes back a bit, it's swept back spreaders. So all the stays get a little bit looser. And so the rig's not boned on then, the whole rig tension's coming off. And so the rig's a little bit more responsive in the light. And also letting the forestay loose, so you're making the genoa a little bit deeper, and also changing the return of the genoa. And because the lowers are a little bit shorter, when you rake it back, it's also doing the right thing to the main. So very, very basically, if you've got that base setting, then you want to ease your forestay as your first move for the light airs.
Willsey, when you're talking about easing your forestay, what sort of numbers are you talking?
We eased basically, some people do 7 to 14 turns. It depends on the boat and the rigging screw. So yeah, and same for the breeze. They were going up, mostly up about 7 to 10 turns. And just keeping, like, there's so many variables So just keeping it very basic. We just had a light, medium, or a light setting, a medium or base setting, and a heavy airs setting. Yeah, so keeping it very, very basic. Yeah.
I think just, you know, just on that, when people are, you know, because I know some people out there get a bit freaked out about moving the rig around, and it is what all the top boats will be doing 100%. But there's also a lot of time spent pre-regattas or throughout the season making sure that the rig's in tune sideways, and making sure that the tensions on the diagonals and that are correct, which we don't need to go into too much detail here, but there's definitely a you know, time needs to get put in of just sailing upwind in the various range, looking up your mast, making sure that when it's windy, that your mast is nice and straight. When it's light, that you've got a bit of sag in your rig, so you're getting as much power as you can, and more importantly, it's even tack to tack, and that can be the hardest thing to do in a boat like this, is getting that rig as even as possible. So there should be a lot of time and emphasis put into that to you know, try and get the best out of it, out of the rig and the sails.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. The next question just was on in-haulers for boat speed. And the in-haulers on these boats, we basically are using the in-haulers mostly for the number 2, but I still use them on the number 1 Genoa. Then this is all stemmed down from people like Cam in the Grand Prix circuit. It's all trickled down to the Young 88. Cam's sailing around in boats that are probably at like 3 degrees sheeting angle.
Yeah.
Young 88's very, very wide angle. And I noticed with the number 1 Genoa in the very light, before the crew's sort of on the rail, when the crew's inboard, you're easing a little bit of Genoa sheet to open the leach, and it's out along the stanchions. And so I figured basically in the light, sort of under the 6 knots, we're still in-hauling the number 1 Genoa just in to hit the shrouds and bring it off those stanchions, just to narrow the sheeting angle. There's no wash in the main at that point, and just to help your pointing, really. If you need a bit more speed, you can drop the in-hauler off straight away, get some speed on, and then pull the in-hauler back on. But it seems like the 88s overpower quite quick, and so we ditched the in-hauler on the number 1 Genoa, sort of over 7 knots. There's a very, very small amount that we were in-hauling, very small wind range. But the number 2 is a different story. That number 2 is designed for in-hauling. So when we say that, the exit of the sail is a lot straighter. And so you need to in-haul our new number 2s to get the most out of them. And you know, a lot of you guys are very onto that and have seen what we've been doing. But it definitely increases the wind range that you can sail that number 2 through now as well. You can in-haul very, very hard. And as it gets breezy, I'm just looking at the wash in the main. So the wash in the main, I'm just meaning the backwinding. So we're working together. If there's too much backwind, the first thing I do is flatten the main, and then if the main's flat, then I ease in-hauler again.
Yeah, it's really important here. We'll touch a little bit later on in the crew work side about the trim and the speed loop when relating to where your in-hauler should be, and making sure that the helms person, the main sheet, and the jib trimmer are all sort of talking together in that little loop about how the boat's feeling and performing, and making sure it's set up how they want it to do. You know, certainly downrange in the downrange on your smaller jib, the more in-hauler you're using there will create a lot more power in the boat. So whenever you're sort of lacking power, the first thing you want to try and do is get your in-hauler in, and it'll generate an incredible, a lot more power than you've had in the past. So, and it's easy to get it off, it's easier to get it out. So you always want to air on the inside, and then you can easily adjust it out if you have to.
And just sort of rounding out the speed discussion, obviously you've got a one design boat. So one of the things that you can control again is having sails that are in good working order and good condition. It's in the Etchels, if I go back to that, which is what I sail a lot of again, the fastest boats are the ones with good jibs. As soon as you're off the pace, we need to look at a new jib. So that's one of the key things, even in the club racing on the Tuesday nights. And so I've really talked to a lot of guys and a lot of teams, and we try and budget for at least one new sail per season. And I have had the instance of like a FAR 1020 winner. He'd won the Nationals. He didn't buy new sails for 4 years or so. And then he came to me and said, oh, I've got to buy a whole new set, so I'm going to have to stop racing. You know, and no one wants that. So I look at sails as something you've got a budget for, and just have a nice sail program, cycling them through, and you'll always be up near the top of the fleet. And then what I've got here is some sail scans. They're quite different sail shapes. Obviously, one on the left is actually raging in medium conditions. The one on the right's a boat out at Bucklands Beach that does a lot of rum racing. It's got a lot of softer mast, and it's in a breezier condition there. So this is what we call ACER sail scan, and it's a very useful tool. It's really good for us to take photos when the sail's new, and then we can take sails later on, see how it's aging, see if we need to recut it. We also take sails and then we can photos, and then we say, hey, look, you've got too much twist in this photo. You need to pull your main sheet on, or you need to straighten out your mast by pulling your lowers on, as you could probably see in the right-hand photo. So it's a really good way to communicate between the sail maker and the boat, because we can't be on every boat all the time. And just a few points. One of the other questions was, how do we take a photo like this? Just take a photo vertically of the sail. Try and make sure you get all the stripes in, the speed stripes. Try and get a little bit of the boom in if you're taking a mainsail photo. I find that helpful for me to get the center line as a comparison tool. The jib, obviously there's no boom there. Just get all the stripes in, and yeah.
And nowadays with the phone qualities, that, you know, almost all phones have good enough quality cameras to take really good sail photos nowadays.
Yeah, exactly. We do use a wide angle lens quite often for work, but quite often if the battery runs out on that camera, I'll just take photos off my cell phone like Cam said, and they're just fine. So, and yeah, fire them through to us at work, and we can scan them free of charge, talk to you about what we'd recommend doing. And, you know, we used it in the TP52, finding out stuff about runner tension, etc. Yeah. And this is just a photo I had on file, and it's just saying here, for boat speed, obviously, think about the mode that you're in. This boat here had a big gap to leeward of it, and for me, if I've got a big gap to leeward, I'm all about boat speed, want to get rumbling. And you can see up the top here, their mainsail's quite closed. that would be in a mode of height. If you're trying to squeeze someone out, I pretty much use my speed, get flow on the foils, and height comes from that. So I'm just saying, pick the mode that's right for the part of the racetrack you're in, and just be careful of that. So maybe we'll talk more about that after that starting video, Cam.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Cool. Here we go. So Cam and I will work together on this with you guys. Cam, do you want to go through some of this?
Yeah.
And get a break from me.
Yeah. So I guess, obviously the first line is says itself, starting is the most important part of the race, which it is. Starting, getting into that first beat, getting to the top mark. I do a lot of analysis in my work as a coach, watching various fleets overseas, and it's amazing how little fleets change from after the top mark rounding. It doesn't matter how long or short the race is. The general race, if you took the top mark position of almost all the top racing fleets around the world, you'll almost generally find the end result of the regatta based off who won to the top mark. It's very rare. You get the odd anomaly, but all about getting off the start line, getting your strategy right, and getting to the top mark and good average spot, so you can do that over a whole regatta. Key to starts is doing your homework. Do your homework on the lines, getting your lay lines, getting comfortable around the start box, getting your transits sorted. So and a lot of this comes back to the people on the bow. The bow person has to really remind the skipper, the people in the back of the boat, that they need to get their transits, because it's the bowman that's up there using it the most in the start. So, the bowman got to be on their mates at the back of the boat all the time, saying, hey, make sure we get a transit. I really need to get transits, because, none of the top bowmen in the world will go off the start line without getting a transit sorted. It generally always comes back to, if people are struggling on the start line, you'll always come back to, hey, we just need to do more time runs, more lay lines, trying to get comfortable in the area. So I think, what Woolsey, I was talking to him the other day, and he was told many years ago that he should always spend at least 15 minutes practicing in the start area. Is that right, Woolsey?
Yeah, so that changed everything for me starting wise. Dirk Newman, a guy I sailed with in the Etchells, really, really good sailor, won the Etchell Worlds, and we won together as well. He religiously spends 15 minutes on the start line before every race, and he got me doing it, and my starts instantly improved. You find a lot of people just sailing around behind the line, etc. He's got me on the line, going up and down, like seeing what's over, what's under, checking lay lines for the pin, etc. the whole time, instead of just wasting time.
The lay lines are a classic one, especially when you're sailing, and it's easy. You don't need to spend a huge amount of time on lay lines if it's a nice steady onshore breeze and it's only shifting 5 degrees. You can get a few runs at the line and get a pretty good handle on sort of where you are. But when it's shifty offshore, which we have a lot here and at home with the 88s racing, certainly in the harbour or racing out off the bays, or down off Eastern Beach, it can be as shifty as all heck, so 20-degree shifts, you've got to get comfortable knowing where your limits are for a pin-end lay line or a committee boat lay line. So just keep spending the time and do it. It's not just a thing. You'll see a lot of people are excited, and you'll see a lot of boats focusing on the start line for the first race of the day. But it's the second and the third races of the day where everyone just wants to finish and hang out and eat and relax. The starts will generally get worse. So if you can just work into your routine, and a lot of this, we've got the word routine down there. have a bit of a pre-race timeline that you're constantly trying to meet. So, and it's all about performance, and it all is relating to you getting to the top mark in a better position, which is going to give you a better position at the end of the day. So taking a little bit of time out of your chill out time to actually spend on the start, I guarantee you will make you enjoy your day sailing a lot more, because your result will get better.
If the schedule starts 10 o'clock, you got to be down at the committee boat at 9:45 and start doing all that stuff. And you probably would have done it before your practice beat as well.
It can be difficult between races, but it's, it is really important to try and just be, get that routine going in there. And, another thing I'd like to talk about just quickly on the routine side is the routine of in the pre-start sequence. And again, it's another thing that we harp on in the pro circuit. And if the amount of races that I've watched now from a coach boat and now sailing in those fleets as well, you get to see that all the top guys have a very clear routine that they follow through a pre-start sequence. And I can almost guarantee you where someone's going to start by where they're positioned at 3 minutes before the start. And it's just a case of trying to get a very regular routine going with your system of how you like to start. And then just, if it's not working or you're not quite getting it, you just start refining that technique rather than throwing a whole bunch of darts at the board and just being completely different every start you do. And that's probably, again, that's sort of the more common thing you'll see in a club racing situation, where there's one start, someone will be over by the committee boat with 3 minutes to go. The next start, he'll be over by the pin with 3 minutes to go. The next start, the jib will only be going up with 3 minutes to go. So every start is different. And so then it's really hard to get a consistently good starting technique going. So if, I would want to stress that the most, of just try and work on a timeline beforehand, and then being in similar positions, and then you just tweak it for if you want to start at the pin or the committee boat. You tweak when you're going to be tacking back into the lineup, or whether you're going to be tacking in underneath which group, but you're always doing it from a similar angle and a similar position. And this will allow you to become a lot more comfortable in what you're doing. Because if you're doing something different every start you're doing, there's no way you can perfect it.
So we'll keep going through this, but it seems like we've sort of covered a little bit about starting routine already, which is good, and the key times and the position in that anti-clockwise flow that everyone gets into before the start. A few other things. We're going to talk about probably crew communication and job roles in the last section there. And we've also got a little video of bias versus strategy coming up. So maybe we'll keep going through that, eh?
Yeah, I think that, the bias versus strategy is a good one. You can focus in on your start line very well, but you've got to make sure that the start line fits in, where you want to start on the line fits in with your strategy for the upwind. So, you've done your pre-race training, or you've already done a race on the race course, and you've got an idea of where you want to go on the course. Now, how does the start line fit into that? Now, obviously, if you want to go left and the pin's a little bit favored, then it's an easy decision to start down at the pin. But like in sailing, it's one of the cool things about our sport is that Mother Nature's forever changing, and there's so many variables to throw into the mix. So, if it's a heavily favored left-hand race course, a good race committee will generally try and set the committee boat a little bit favored, mainly because they know that everyone will pile up at the pin, and then they run the risk of having lots of general recalls, which race officers generally don't like. But it actually makes, if they do that, they'll make the race course a lot better for everybody, because it gives you a lot more options. It doesn't just spread the fleet out straight away. So that's sort of the things that you really need to factor in all your pre-races. Yes, okay, this end's favoured or that end's favoured, but how does it fit into my strategy? Where do I want to be in 5 minutes' time, and how can I get there from there?
Nice. So that's similar to the start here, right?
Yeah, so this start here is this is in Portacervo, a real classic. We want to go back one, Woolsey.
Hold on.
This is in Portacervo in the classic sort of Mistral direction. Moderate sort of 16, 18 knots of breeze. It's all about getting left is sort of the general consensus here, is you want to just get up into the shore. Get into the left is the percentage move. But the committee have done a nice job of setting the committee boat sort of almost 10 degrees favoured. But you can still see the majority of the fleet is still into that still mindset of we've got to get left, we've got to get left. This is about a minute to go to the start. There's a bit of breeze, so there's not too much manoeuvring going on. And, you know, the key, obviously, in any start, and I don't need to tell you this, I'm sure, is to be able to get a lane off the line and go where you want to go. So if you want to go left, it's going to be really important that you've either got a little gap to leeward so you can hold your lane to get going that way. You don't want to get flushed out to the right. And if you are taking the bias of the line, you want to be able to use that gauge to go as fast as possible to make bearing on the boats to leeward of you. So when the left shift does come in, you've taken a bunch of that line bias out of it because you've gained bearing on the fleet. So you can see here on this start here, there's a couple of boats have come, the second boat down from the committee's start's just gone now. They've got a glamour start there. They were fully launched with a nice big gap to leeward because they're faster than that boat to leeward. So they're going to have the biggest lane in the world. So they will just be in a full hammer down mode, just trying to sail above targets to make bearing on the boats to leeward of them, to take away the advantage of the left-hand shift later on. As you can see here, and this is a great shot of the different little pockets of boats. Now you're going to have all these boats that have got boats tight on their hips and little gaps to leeward are probably going to end up in good positions not long after the start. You know, the guys down at the pin have got a bit of gap, and then there's a couple of clusters in the middle where both of the boats to leeward have got nice gap. Boats to leeward of their tight little cluster have got nice gaps to leeward of them, so they'll be able to go fast as well. And as it pans around the side here, you'll see very quickly off the line how important having that clear lane to goers. And this guy here that got that nice start just down from the committee boat, he's just trying to boot it there, and you can see he's gone really well and forward on this guy down to leeward. And he wouldn't even be worrying about the boat up on his hip. He's not worried about trying to get rid of him or anything like that. It's just all about boat speed and worrying about the boats down to leeward. You can see the shoreline ahead in the drone footage. That's where the breeze ends up being stronger and more left bent off that shoreline. But you can see this pan around here. All those boats that were the leeward boats have shot forward. And so every one of those boats that started up on someone's hip tightly is flushed out, will eventually have to get tacked off and will make quite a big loss. So it was just sort of just trying to point out you don't have to there wasn't a lot of maneuvers coming into that start, but it was all about just trying to create your lane to go the way you wanted. Now this next one is a lot lighter air start. And you'll be able to see in this one at about the same time, 1:30 to the start, the whole fleet is a lot closer to the line, obviously, because there's, the boats are going a lot slower. But again, in light air starts, probably the biggest mistake that people make is being late or getting in gas, and then they can't make it. And you'll look at a start line and you can tell, you look at that guy there where Woolsey's got his cursor on there. This is sort of a minute to go, and they'll really be struggling from there to get themselves a nice start.
He's sort of funny how he left there. He needed to fight to get in the front row, fight to get
Exactly.
bow forward of the boat above him.
One thing I always say to my guys is, if you find your back, you've got to do everything you can. The trimmers should always be doing everything they can through this period in the light air to get in the front row, get even with the bows either side of you. You can always slow down, but speeding up is near impossible. You can't teleport yourself forward at the end. You've got to fight like crazy to get in the front row. If you feel like you're a little bit vulnerable, then deal with it later on. But do everything you can to fight to get even bows with the boats either side. But what's important here, then, okay, you've got the blue boat up here, Brunennisek, going to get a nice start off the committee boat. These guys up this end have got nice gaps. What's important, though, is if you have got yourself a compromised start, don't hang around in that compromised position. Get out of there, and it's more important than light air than anything, because the speed differential will be huge. So straight away here off the line, we've got 1, 2, and 3 boats, the blue boat or the green boat down there, attacking straight away. They're not mucking around. They're not hanging out, trying to fight their way out of anything. They know they're slow. You need to get into clear air and at least get your boat going up to speed, because you know that the ones that have got clear air off the line are at full noise. So every minute, every 30 seconds you spend compromised, you're giving away meters to the other guys. So, start lines for me is routine, trying to get good at your start and your technique. And once you nail that, then you can start throwing other things in. Work really hard on being able to hold your lanes and getting a gap to leeward. And if you are compromised, don't hang there for 1 second more than you have to. And often you'll know you're going to be compromised a minute before the start, or at least 30 seconds before the start. You just know, and you've got to be strong enough in your conviction to just know, okay, we've stuffed this up. So your whole strategy then is finding your exit strategy and how are you best going to get out of it, and don't just live in hope. And I think that's probably quite a big difference between the top guys who might not get a good start and the not so good guys. The top guys, they know they've screwed the start up early, and so they're immediately going into thinking, how can they rectify it and get out of there and get clear and get on with life.
Nice. All right. We'll move on to the next topic, but yeah, for me also, I promise you guys, if you start doing that 15 minutes before the start homework as a routine, your starts will instantly get better. So here we go. Crew work. Yes, I guess,
crew work, it covers, the term crew work covers everything, but, it mainly is, from a mechanical side, crew work, the goal is that you should be able to get through a day sailing or go around the race course mechanically doing everything at 100%. There's no excuses not to do the jobs mechanically well. The tactician will never do everything 100% right, and the tactician can make the biggest mistake for sure and lose you the most place. The job of the crew is to make sure that they give the boat and the skipper and the tactical side the best opportunity to have a good race. And that's just doing all the jobs really well, concentrating on your job, and everything you do is making the boat go fast.
I also, look ahead of what's coming up, look and anticipate a little bit as a crew. You'll wait for the call, but if you should be thinking in your head, I think he's going to go around that gate. What do I need to do? Mm-hmm. Okay. And then the call will come. Yep, we're going around that gate, and you've already got it in your head what you're doing. So don't just shut off from sailing and think that the tactician's going to do it all. Like, keep thinking ahead and be ready. Yeah.
I think it's really important for the crew to try and, the best crews out there will be ones that are thinking tactically themselves and are figuring out, they know what move is probably going to happen. So they're a step ahead, and then the whole boat will then work nicely. You know, that one of the best bowmen that I've ever raced with in my time as a professional sailor is Jeremy Lomas, who was the skipper of the Young 88 that I won the Nationals with years ago. You know, he's a bloody good sailor, you know, but he is one of the world's best bowmen and has been all the time. And that's one of the reasons he's a really good bowman, is because he's a really, really good tactical sailor as well. So he knows his job inside out, but he can help the rest of the boat and knows what's coming up. And so nothing's a great surprise to him.
Fully agree. All right, so we've moved to the next slide here, Cam.
Yeah, so, you know, a playbook, I think, is you know, you hear a lot of talks about playbooks, you know, especially I think for a team that is maybe constantly changing over a season, as I know a lot of you will have boats where, you know, you can't keep the same crew over and over and over again. It's pretty nice to have a written out, you know, playbook that, you know, on a spreadsheet or whatever, that you can send to people so people know their general roles coming into a team. But it is also, you know, really important to remember that there's, like in sailing, there's many ways to do the job. As I said there's many ways to skin a cat. So you find the best solution for your boat with the people that you've got at your disposal. But once you get a system going, if you can get it down into a regular and have that written out, so when you do have crew coming in for random races, or you've just got one crew coming in for a regatta, you can give them your playbook or send it to them, and then they're the one trying to learn it rather than everyone else having to adapt to someone new. And I think that'll keep a lot more regularity going in your crew work. But, you know, don't be afraid to trying various ways of doing things too.
There are playbooks available for the class. Like I know the War Machine guys have wrote their own one, and they've made some available in the owner's toolkit on the website. So have a look there. But it's definitely a good thing if you've got 5 guys that are regular and you can just give the bowman or whoever the playbook and they can have a little look of what's expected. It really helps. Yeah. Next slide.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, communication. You know, I think as a sailing coach, probably number one thing on the list you talk about on any debrief for any day, any regatta, is communication. It always comes back to the communication, and it's whether you're on a double-handed boat or whether you're on a 140-foot super yacht. The communication is really important. So, you know, having a clear process on who talks when is really important, and I think that leads back to having the various loops in the boat. So when I talked about the loops, we talk about a tactical loop, which would be, you know, on the 88 would be your skipper, whoever's doing the sort of the tactics and the crew, and then maybe you've got another person up on the rail who's looking at the big picture things a bit more. They should be the only people sort of having that little chat going on amongst themselves throughout the race. Then you've got your speed loop upwind, which should be led by the helmsperson and the main sheet trimmer. And whoever's probably the most experienced out of those two would sort of take the lead out of that. And then obviously the jib trimmer's a really key part in that. And don't forget that. There's often you get on too many boats and the jib trimmer and the main sheet trimmer are almost two completely separate entities. They're not, they're one. They really need to talk together all the time and understand, like we talked earlier about in-haulers and so forth, and getting the correct setup is making sure that that loop is really important, talking about the modes. And then same downwind, it's your helmsperson and the spinnaker trimmer. And then the tactician, from the tactical side, if you're running a separate tactician, is that they'll join in those speed loops talking about changes they need in the mode for tactical reasons. So whether you're on a big lift or you're feeling a bit vulnerable in a spot, whether if you're in a big lift and you want to boot it really fast, they might say something like, oh, we want to be sailing 2/10 over target or sailing really fast here. You'll get your own key phrases that you'll use as a team that will trigger the same response. So whether we need to be in a fast mode or whether we need to be in a higher slow mode, we must survive here for a while. If you're on a really big lift on an offshore breeze and you're in a really compromised tight lane, but you know that you have to survive there because if you tack off, it's going to be a massive loss. It's really important that the tactician or the tactical people feed that information to the trimmers and the helmsman so they know how to set the boat up and sail the boat and know there's a reason for it. And just keep painting the picture. But, and important for the rest of the crew to really keep the noise down as much as you can. A quiet boat generally is a fast boat. And that's probably because these sort of loops between the tactical side and the speed can then operate really efficiently.
Yeah, I really agree. I just wrote some points down from my point, and one of them was a quiet boat and no superfluous noise, just only necessary talk about sailing. The other thing, just for the communication, I sailed with Joey Allen a lot, and he's a master at it, and he really we have common words that we say all the time, so we can't get mixed up, and they are like copy is yes, I understand. Negative, that's not happening. They can't get mixed up. And also, as a tactician, that's what I've done a lot of as well. It really frustrates me if I say, okay, guys, we're going to do this at the next mark or whatever, but you don't see any response from the crew. So it's good to just get a copy so you know that they've heard it. Or if they're not doing a copy, even if they just do a thumbs up or something, so you know that they've got the message and you're not worried that you're going to go around the mark and nothing's going to happen. Those are just some key communication things for me. And
yes, super important. I've learned a lot over the years myself through sailing a lot with foreign speaking crews. I've spent a lot of time sailing with Russians and Spanish and Italians in the last bunch of years, and often been one or only one of two English speakers on the yacht, and I'm making them all sail in English because my Russian is terrible. And I end up having to go through and record myself around a race course and then go back and listen to actually what I do say, because what I think I say sitting here in the comfort of my lounge can be quite different to what I might say actually in the heat of the battle. I'll use a slightly different phrase, and so when you're speaking with foreigners, that can really throw them. So I would go and record myself and then write down all the different terms I use at those various points around the race course, and then write an explanation of what they mean. And it's quite incredible to learn. And one of probably the biggest advancements in the coaching world in the last few years is having a lot better recording devices, voice recorders, a lot better quality, that we can now, when we go and do our debriefs at the end of the day, we'll have the drone footage linked in with the GoPro, but also linked in with the voice coming out off the boat. And it'd often be the tactician or someone have that on their clothing, and the sound quality is really good. And that's made a huge difference in the learnings and cutting out mistakes around the race course, because we finally get rid of all the arguments of, oh, well, I said that, and no, you didn't say that, and I said this and that, no, you didn't say that. Well, here we go, we can play it again. And I think it's improved the game considerably.
It's interesting.
You don't like hearing it sometimes, but it's, you can't hide from it, but it really makes you learn.
And I was just going to touch on that, one of the bottom ones there. You wrote the speed loop downwind. I think that really helped us win that last nationals in the 88. We started off pretty slow in the first race. We got faster and faster downwind, and it was because of the communication between the helmsman and the spinnaker trimmer and actually the main sheet trimmer. We were, and the whole crew actually, I was stopping steering the boat, and the crew were like, if we wanted to come up, the typical lean to leeward and the typical slow roll to windward, if we wanted to bear away, and we got the spinnaker and the main moving together. And I just always wanted to keep a little bit of bite on the rudder. So we were just sailing a little bit hotter, more apparent. But it was just really, really important to have that clear communication and really stay focused. Otherwise,
Yeah,
we wouldn't have won. Yeah.
well, that's a good point, Willsy, and what the point you make there about just keeping that little bit of load on the rudder. I think
Yeah.
that's for the communication side, the helmsperson obviously has the best communicator in their hands as far as feeling the boat going, and keep the helmsperson's got to keep feeding that information to the crew and to the trimmers of what they're feeling.
Yeah.
The more you can do that, you don't have to be a rock star sailor driving a boat. If you start feeling changes on the way that the helm load is, that's generally bad. The more regular you can have it, the more locked in, the better you'll go. So
Yeah.
communicate that.
Cool. Intensity. I suppose this is what we just started touching on then.
Yeah, no, this is sort of a word that you've written down in our notes, and I think it's it's an important one, and it's probably when I was a young professional sailor coming through, and I started getting the opportunity to sail with a bunch of these guys that I had sort of looked up to all my life from around the world and read about in magazines and things. What blew me away was the intensity that they had around the race course. And it's always stood out in my mind. And, as I write down the bottom here, intensity doesn't mean that you have to be super serious and not have a smile on your face and not have fun and have a laugh. But, it all comes back to, as I say there at the top, feeling the boat. Intensity for me is just being fully in tune with the boat for the entire race, and understanding the feel of the boat and using that to make the boat go faster and sail the boat around the course, So it's just sort of being, I guess, intensity might not be the right word, being tuning into your environment. And I do a lot of sailing and coaching with very, very inexperienced helms people, that are racing these boats around the world. And if the biggest thing you can do is try and get them from day one to feel the boat and understand the feel and what changes that feel, rather than just being robotic. If you can feel, we say, sometimes you'll have your best races in a big boat when all the instruments go out, because all of a sudden you've got to get back to feeling the boat like a dinghy and sailing it like a dinghy, and just using your senses.
Yeah.
And the whole crew needs to be involved in it, though.
One of the things here, intensity. Like I look at sailing, it's a sport. We all do it. So, you play to do your best, and for the sport, the intensity is like hiking properly, focusing on sailing and not other things, and just moving your weight round and just trying to contribute to doing the best you can for that good result. Yeah.
I think I just want to answer. There's one question here that someone's written up: is why would you load the rudder downwind? Lift isn't required. Isn't that drag? I'm not talking about loading it. I guess what I was meaning is keeping it the same load. So, and it'll only be a tiny little bit of load, but if it keeps on changing from load to no load to load to no load, your boat's not balanced. So you want to keep you want to, yes, you want to have it as neutral as you can, but you still want to be able to have it just of that tiniest bit of bite. So then you know you've got precise steering going on. You've got something to lean against. Does that sound right, Woolsey, to you?
Yeah. It's the same with when we're dinghy sailors. If I have a tiny, it was quite light in the Nationals, and if the rudder was dead, no feeling going downwind, I was sailing very low, and as a consequence, very slow, no apparent. And we changed that to just coming up a tiny bit, having a tiny bit of very, very small, just so the rudder wasn't dead, just had a little bit of tug, and we're sailing a little bit higher, a lot more apparent, and we went from losing a couple of boats each run to never being passed, and that was the difference. Yeah. So
Yes. It's a good question, but I think, yeah, the main thing there is just not to have it constantly changing. That is the worst thing, because
yeah,
every time you're moving it like that, you're pulling the handbrake on.
yeah. And then one of the other things, I had a question come in, as someone wrote about fore and aft trim downwind. We sort of touched on it at the start, I think, but I do remember vividly in Nationals, and it was getting windier, and we actually were getting like eaten up a bit downwind. And I found that moving the weight back when it was windy in that 15 to 25 knot wind range, moving the crew a little bit off the bow to midships in the 15 to 18, and then 18 plus back into the cockpit a bit more, the boat seemed to just perform a lot better. I think it would be interesting to talk to Jim Young, the designer, and talk to him about, I guess the boat's designed to have the weight in the cockpit, and it seemed to perform better. So just don't get caught with all your crew up the front in the breeze. Yeah. Can you see other questions there, Cam? I can't see them because I've
No more questions. If anybody's got any questions, fire them in now, or forever hold your peace. Yes, I guess, Woolsey, just on that fore and aft trim point, so in the 88, you will go through a range of breeze where you'll have the spinnaker trimmed from the cabin top and the light stuff to be being trimmed aft in the breeze, and transfer that through the range.
Good point. Yeah, we do change that because of the same reason. I like the weight back once it starts blowing. And just find that the trimmer's got a lot more room for his arms and stuff at the back there. So, but definitely very, very sensitive boats to fore and aft. So in the light, up to about 12 knots, I'm guessing, we'd be on the cabin top winches, and then we'd move to the aft winches for the downwind. So, yeah, that's the way we do it.
Yeah.
Everyone's got their own way, though.
Yeah, and it'll depend a bit about your crew, the weight of your crew as well, and if you've got a little trimmers, big trimmers, everyone the wind range will change a little bit with that.
Yeah, we seem to be the weight for the guys is kind of average human, 80 something kgs on average. Yeah. So, and that seems to be a pretty fast weight. There were weight limits in the 88, and I'm not sure now. I think they've sort of eased up on them to try and just get more boats out sailing. I'm not too sure. We got to check.
We've got a few more questions coming in here, Woolsey.
Cool.
We've got one here. Can you talk a little bit more about mast rake, please?
Yeah. So at the start of the talk, we kept it pretty simple. All I do is that person that sent in the first question said my boat's fast in that base setting. That's all I do for the first 3 to 6 months. Try and get that base setting nailed for my boat, and then so that base setting, getting the mast rate is just a nice amount of helm, sailing upwind, which would be, I'd guess, a kilo. I'm not. I don't know how strong my arms are, but you know, what I was saying before about I never want to push the helm away from me. I always want to have a little bit of weather helm, else the boat's just dead. That's absolute suicide, having to push the helm away from you in any boat. So I set that base setting up, and then to keep it real basic, we're just saying we're easing off the forestay. That's probably got not so much of a adjustment in rake, but more sail shape and yeah, pulling forestay on. We actually have a tuning guide that anyone can grab from us, and rig gauges, and I can come down to their boat and help them. Yeah.
Yeah. While we're on trimming world here, I've got another one here for you. When and how much backstay tension do you use?
So obviously take it off in the light to get rid of windage, and make sure it's not getting caught. Then in the medium breeze, sort of the, you know, that medium 10 to 14, whatever it is, I put it back on just as a reference point and don't really use it. So as a reference point for trim and leech twist. So I just have it taut, and it's there if I want to change modes. You know,
so if you wanted to go fast mode, you might pull a little bit more on or something like that.
And yeah, and if the main was starting to rag a bit, and yeah, we'd pull the outhaul and that on, I'd go for the backstay. But yeah, once it gets top end, we really want to flatten that main out, to like stop the wash and the drag. So then it goes from nothing to on very hard in about 17, 18 knots. And yeah.
Perfect. And another one here, well, while you're on a roll there, Wilsey, I'll just fire them at you. Vang, upwind and downwind.
Yeah. Vang, I use it a lot upwind once it gets breezier. The reason being to basically get that bottom panel of the main a bit flatter, the mast a bit more bent down low, once again for wash and stuff and drag. And also the other reason is I can't move the traveller fast enough if it's gusty, like Cam touched on where we sail's quite gusty. So then if I've got a lot of vang on, when I ease main sheet, the boom's going straight out. And so it's like an extension of the traveller, really.
Perfect. Yeah, I just got to
stop the roll. Sorry.
Yeah, no, carry on.
Yeah. No,
yeah, it's an often misused device. I think the vang people can easily forget about it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you and I know how important it was on our P class.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We've got one here about roll tack coordination and jibes, and again, this is just something I think I've talked a little bit about. This is practice to start with. Practice makes perfect. Having someone, what I like to have on a boat is have one person lead the crew weight and the timing of the up and down, calling when to come out and squeeze down on a roll tack or out of a roll jibe. If you have one person lead the charge and everyone buy into that, then if it needs to be adjusted, that one person just adjusts. But if you all start, if you've got 6 people on the boat and 5 of you think someone's not doing a good job, or everyone starts thinking differently, you all end up going across all higgledy-piggledy. So get sort of one person to lead it, and then just practice it and get a nice feel of it. I think it's very rare that you'll ever need to try and, some people I see as, more so in dinghies, but I've seen it on big boats where they think they need to go to leeward to heal the boat more going into attack. I would be very reluctant to do that. It's all about getting the weight across at the right time and coming out with the maximum heel you can. And then just as soon as the boat is going straight again with the maximum power in it, squeezing that down all as one unit. The more you can do that all together, the better.
Yeah, I just had one point in the light. As a helmsman, I really don't like it when they roll it past vertical. So just watch that. When you're flattening the boat, don't go too far. It really makes the helm quite dead.
Yeah, right. A couple more questions, Woolsey.
Yeah, and then we'll have to call it. We promised them it wouldn't be too long.
Yeah, that's all right. We'll get these last two in here then. Are you happy seeing the Leeward V1 flapping around a bit in bass tune or breeze on tune?
Bass or what, sorry?
Are you happy to see the V1 flapping around at bass tune or windy tune?
Basically, I don't like to see the Leeward V1 flapping. Haven't really had that so much in the 88. If I see it flapping, I think that it's out of center of the boat up the top, and I'm trying to keep the rig in the center. So it sounds like it's too loose there. So
yep.
I wouldn't be keen on that. I'm happy for it to be just loose, but if I see it flapping around, that's no good. Too loose.
Yeah, nice one. All right, I think we're pretty good.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks so much, Cam, and thanks everyone for tuning in. Cam's obviously going to be around a little bit, so if you need any help, look him up, and if you need help finding him, give us a call at North, and we can help you find Cam or help you out if you need anything. So thanks again, guys. Take care.
Thanks everybody for listening in, and hopefully we can get out of lockdown next week into level 2, and we'll find out whether that means we can go yachting and big boats again, but let's hope so. Fingers crossed.
Cheers.